everyone, and welcome to this wonderful video on superfoods and how to use them, recipes using them, how to get more in your diet. This can be a concept that's new to people, confusing. What's a superfood? What's not a superfood? How do I eat more? A lot of people think they're very expensive, exotic. We're going to hopefully clarify a lot of those things today and leave you feeling that you can easily incorporate these into your diet. Not necessarily have to spend a lot of money and boost your immunity and everything in an efficient and easy way. But first we're going to talk a little bit about what makes a superfood a superfood. What is a superfood? It's not a legally regulated term, so anyone can call anything a superfood really. We've tried to narrow it down and give some guidelines as to what might fall into a superfood category. Generally, superfoods are foods that are very easy to digest and utilize by the body. So if something fits that bill, it may be a superfood. They're also highly nutritious foods. We're talking above and beyond, like a carrot, for example. They've got higher levels and a wider spectrum of nutrients that they provide to the body. They're also something that can help assist in the prevention and elimination of disease. So these are going to be really beneficial to the healing process and also to just aging gracefully and hopefully avoiding any kind of disease and illness. They also help promote healthy elimination. They are generally broken down and utilized by the body very easily, and of course they're always whole foods, they're always naturally occurring food products. So any kind of synthetic supplement is not going to be a superfood. And the great thing about superfoods, there's a little confusion generally between what's a supplement and what's a superfood. These things don't necessarily come in a pill form. Some of them are packaged in capsules or pills, but a lot of them are just things you can find in the wild or pick or grow and eat yourself. So it's a variety of foods, but it's all things that fit these basic characteristics. A supplement is often not entirely naturally occurring, and that can be a real dangerous thing to the body in terms of trying to boost your immunity and take these extra things in to help you heal. Anything that doesn't come from a whole food in its natural state is generally missing some of the components that it would have had in nature. Say a chemical company tries to pinpoint one particular strong point of a food like turmeric, for example. They find that one thing that's really powerful and they try and not make that or just take that out of it. But what happens in our body is our body does not recognize that as a whole food, and it tries to make it a complete food so that it can understand it, and that means it's going to take whatever it needs to make it complete out of the body. So for example, you take a calcium supplement. Calcium doesn't just happen on its own by itself. Your body's going to pull all these other minerals and cofactors from other places in order to understand that and utilize it. So not only is it a lot of work for your body, it's actually pulling things away from your body that you would otherwise need in order to try and utilize it. And the efficiency in getting what you think you're getting out of that, it's just not usually there. You're not actually getting a lot of what that was. So the whole foods are understood by the body, and essentially if you're eating superfoods, you're supplementing yourself in a lot of really fantastic ways that are complete, understood. It's really hard to overdose on superfoods because the body just uses what it needs and it's going to eliminate the rest of that. So they're safe, they're really effective. And why would we need a superfood? Well, we're so challenged by so many different facets of our lives and the environment these days that any kind of immune boosting we can give ourselves is generally really beneficial. So everyone can benefit from superfoods. If you're healthy already, they can boost your health and about up to 10% improvement. So everybody can benefit from these, and they make a great addition to your diet, and they don't have to be things you go out of your way necessarily to take each day. We're going to talk about how you can incorporate them all. So anyone looking to boost their immune system, to make sure they're getting complete nutrition. Unfortunately, our soil is becoming more and more depleted from years of not so conscious agricultural practices. Our food is traveling from all over, different places around the world, and it's losing a lot of nutrition on the way. So in order to make sure we're really getting a complete spectrum of nutrition, these are great things to include in your diet on a daily basis. and they're only going to take your health to a higher level. Like, all these things are great for things like inflammation, cardiac health, boosting your protein intake, overall well-being, healthy elimination, digestion. So they're really great for just about everything. And there's a number of different ones. Some of them are essentially free, up to some of them do costing more. So whatever you feel like you want to start with and try, pick one thing and see if you can feel the difference and how it affects your health. And it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of new foods too, which I think it's always fun to experiment and learn about new things. I'm just going to talk about a few of the ones I have here. These are things that I would consider superfoods, and I'll talk more about each one as we make a recipe utilizing that food. First, on my left here, we've got a beautiful tray of wheatgrass, and any kind of sprout or sprouted grass of this nature is considered a superfood. These are foods that have really, really amazing health properties with little work on the body. Wheatgrass or other cereal grasses do need to be juiced because we can't break down the fiber and get at all the nutrition there. So generally we would cut something like this, juice it, drink the juice, and a little goes a long way. And that holds true for all these superfoods here. It's not things you need to eat mass quantities of. Most of these are very potent, so you only need a little bit to have a pretty nice effect on your health. So wheatgrass and other cereal grasses, and sprouts I mentioned, so I'll talk about some of the sprouts I have here. These are some lovely sunflower sprouts, grown in the same way you would grow wheatgrass. Complete protein, they've got lecithin. They're just a really, really densely nourishing food. They're really great in green juice or in a salad, or instead of lettuce in a salad. Another example of a sprout I have here is a sprouted French lentil. You can sprout all kinds of beans and seeds. Mung beans, fenugreek we're going to use as well today, lentils. This also includes the alfalfa, clover, broccoli, those kind of fluffy sprouts as well. All sprouts are superfoods, and that's one of the cheaper ways to get these amazing foods into your diet. Seeds for these foods are generally less than $1 a pound. You can do them in your home with very little effort. There's another section of this video that does discuss quick and easy sprouting methods, so you can always tune into that as well. Something else I have here are a few different forms of algae. Algae are, again, another great protein source. They provide a lot of chlorophyll, complete proteins, a lot of great essential fatty acids. The ones I have here are some spirulina in a powdered form, chlorella tablets, and blue-green algae. This is a flaked form of E3 live blue-green algae. You can get it frozen. Most of these come in a fresh frozen or a liquid form, a powder or a tablet form, and they all have some different strong points, but they're all really fantastic. Some other ones I have here are bee pollen. This is another really complete food. This is like wheatgrass in terms of having just about everything you possibly need. You could almost live off of this stuff if you had to. What it is flower pollen that collects on the bees' legs as they fly around from flower to flower. And it's got a lot of properties that aren't even understood yet, but it's got complete protein, a very full spectrum of the B vitamins and all the B complex. And it's really, really tasty too. It's kind of starchy and slightly sweet. It's said to help with preventing allergies, especially if you can get local pollen, and remedying that part of your system, the histamines and everything. And I love to get it locally where I live. It will come in slightly different color shades depending on the flowers that the bee visited. It's really important to, if you're looking for that, make sure it was sustainably harvested and obtained so that the bees are being treated and fed properly and not being harmed at all in the process. That's bee pollen. And I've got here some chia seed. Chia seed falls into a category of superfoods that I consider to be foods high in essential fatty acids, or foods that create this mucilaginous gel when they're soaked. Hemp seed also fits into that category. They're really rich in the omega-3 fatty acids, again high in protein, that's really easy to digest. Complete amino acid profile there. The chia seed is really high in calcium. It's got the boron there as well, which helps bring calcium to the bones, so it's a great bone building food. just really nourishing, provides a lot of stamina, and really versatile. We're going to use it in a few different things in this video. The hemp seed is the shelled, the inside of the hemp seed here, and it's a little flat kind of cream-colored disc, really creamy in nature, blends up well into sauces and smoothies, but can also just be shaken on a salad and enjoyed that way. Really versatile again. You can use it in soups, salads, smoothies. Has that great protein level and amino acid profile, and pretty easy to find now. You can get a lot of hemp products at most health food stores these days. I've also got here something called maca powder. Maca, among other superfoods like beepon, is what's considered an adaptogen, which means that it is really great for helping your adrenal system out and combating stress. It has the ability to normalize levels in either a negative or a positive way. If they need to be brought down, any part of you is overstimulated, it will bring it down. If it's understimulated, it brings it up. So overall, it's just very strengthening to the body in that way. And it's a kind of root tuber that grows in very high altitudes in South America. It's a very hardy plant, one of the few plants that can actually grow at such a high altitude in extreme conditions. So it's really potent. It's been used by ancient cultures for thousands of years, and so it's just powdered here and dried, and it's got a slightly sweet, kind of a corny taste to me, so it goes really well with any kind of shakes or desserts or things that are slightly sweet in nature, but you can also use it in savory things as well. Another category of superfoods is wild and edible plants from your local area. I've got one here that is not from this area, but for the purposes of the video, it's one that most people know about. It's dandelion leaf, and it's found, pretty much everywhere. This is just one example of wild edibles, and the best way to learn about them, there's so many different ones, and it's really relative to your area, is to take a class in your area on wild edibles, and they can show you all the things around you that you can actually just pick and eat growing wild there. So of course, the fresher you eat something, the better, so that's one reason why these things are so powerful as foods. They're growing in the wild, meaning they haven't been cultivated at all. Their genetic structure hasn't been changed deliberately by people at all. So they've got a lot of nourishment. They're usually very high in chlorophyll, and they're free. A lot of times, if you know what they look like, you can just walk through your yard or through a forest nearby, and you can find these things and have a great snack. And like I said, a little goes a long way, so you don't need to have a tremendous salad of these things to really experience the benefits. We're going to use the dandelion greens in an easy salad today. And the one other category of superfoods is what I consider to be everyday spices and seasonings that just have a lot of power, things that might already be in your pantry that you don't even realize how special they are. And some of these things are ginger, garlic, I have here, fresh garlic, turmeric, and there's some cayenne here as well. And these are just foods that have been used over the ages for many different medicinal purposes, and they're easy to incorporate into your everyday preparations, and they have a lot of therapeutic benefit to them. There's also other ones that fall into that category, but these are some of the most common ones. So that's a basic introduction to your superfoods. Now we're going to get into some of the recipes using them. Just want to mention there's more information on these in this handy reference chart here, called a permachart. And this talks again about what I mentioned, why they're beneficial, what makes a superfood, what's not, and gives some of these categories. It goes more into detail on why what their strong points are and how you can use them. So the first recipe we're going to make today is using an algae. The best way to take algae is generally mixing them into water or a liquid and consuming them. If that's not as appealing to you, you can also mix them in with your food. I think ideally you probably get the most out of them on their own, but if you just want to give extra boost, or you're trying to find ways to get children to eat these maybe because they won't eat them on their own, you can certainly mix it in with other things as well. We're going to take a really basic green dressing here, and we're just going to give it a little boost with some spirulina powder. And spirulina is a green algae here, and it's really high. It's greater than 50% protein, so it's really high in protein. Easy to digest and understand and utilize this protein in your body. The algae in general are really great for essential fatty acids as well. They have the nucleic acids, which are what makes up your DNA and RNA. So this is a food that can really strengthen and rebuild damaged DNA and RNA, so it's powerful that way as well. And of course, they're extremely high in chlorophyll. You'll see by the color of this dressing that it's really, really green, and greener than like wheatgrass, for example. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. We've got about 1.5 cups of fresh herbs here. There looks like more than that on a plate, but if you smushed it in, that's about how much it would be. And it's really up to you what you like in terms of herbs. I've got a mixture of dill, parsley, and basil here, but you could use whatever you prefer or have on hand or have in your garden. Completely up to you. Again, generally the more green foods the better, so anything green you want to put in there, feel free. Scallions, celery, it's up to you. This is just a basic guideline to start with. We're going to use a clove of garlic. Again, this is not only using the algae superfood, it's using the garlic as well, which I consider to be a superfood. We've got our spirulina powder, all just going into the blender. We're going to do about 1/2 cup of some extra virgin olive oil. And about 3 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. Just to give, again, the balance in a dressing usually comes from some sort of acid, some sort of fat, something flavoring. Often a little sweetness helps balance the dressing out too. You could put a drop or two of stevia in there if you're really trying to mimic a vinaigrette that you like that has a little bit of sweetness to it to balance it. The only other thing I haven't added is something that we might consider a flavor enhancer, like something salty, which brings out all the other flavors. I'm going to use a little bit of kelp powder this time for that. You can use sea vegetables as your salt. You could use something like Bragg's liquid aminos, or some versions of soy sauce that are healthier than their natural or their counterparts there in the conventional sense. Some people will use celery powder, which is what I really like, is dehydrated celery powder into a powder form. That's got a naturally occurring high level of sodium in it, so it's a really nice, clean way to salt your food. I don't think I put any in yet. Oh yeah, sprinkle a little kelp powder in. So it's up to you what you'd like to use there. And now we're ready to blend. You could certainly add ginger to this as well if you like that. The really important part here is to taste it and make sure that you like anything that you're making before you say, oh, it's done, put it on my food, and then maybe it's not exactly what you were hoping for. It's really easy to adjust it at this point if you think it's not salty enough or too lemony or it needs to be thicker. There's a lot of simple ways to modify that. With the powders as well, sometimes after you let it sit for a while, it's going to dissolve a little better, even though this blender is very strong. If it tastes a little granular or anything at first, let it sit for a while and maybe blend it up again. The powders will probably have absorbed and dispersed a little bit better. It's nice and lemony and tangy. I really like the herbs in it. This dressing is a little on the thick side. Sometimes if you have a lot of parsley, it congeals things. If anyone's ever put parsley in their juice, you'll notice that it kind of separates and gets like a thick layer on the top if you don't drink it right away. So if you add a lot of parsley, you might want to add a little water. I might do that here just to thin it a little, make it a little smoother. And we'll blend it again. So you can see this is a really kind of fun and surprising color. Maybe not what you would expect your dressing to actually end up looking like. If I can pour some in a cup here so you can see it better. And spirulina is really fun to add for children's things, because you can make stuff called like green slime, and just by making a basic like avocado banana pudding with some spirulina, and it looks really interesting and different, and they can play with it a little before they eat it. But it's a really beautiful color, I think. Not a color we're used to eating so much, but it makes a really delicious dressing, and coat your salads with it, dip your veggies in it, whatever you want to do. Easy way to get some more algae in. So our next recipe is a fun, kind of creative, different one here. And this one has a little bit of fruit in it, so food combining, not perfect, but I think it's a great treat, recreational thing, dessert if you have that occasionally, or if you're looking to turn somebody on to raw food that doesn't realize all the amazing things you can make with it. It's a really fun recipe to use with them. And this is a banana nut bread recipe. Breads can be something to that, especially if you're new to raw. It's really hard to give up some of the breads. And while this is considered a sweet, quick bread, it really has a great flavor and texture, I think, that comes pretty close to the conventional banana bread that many of us may have had before. And the superfoods we're going to use in this recipe are the bee pollen. Bee pollen, again, like the algae and like a lot of the other ones, ideally is going to be just consumed on its own, like take a spoonful of it on an empty stomach. That's how you're going to digest it the fastest and the most quickly. But if you or your children have a hard time doing that, or if you're just looking for other ways to utilize it and get more of it in, certainly using it in sweet recipes like this one is a great way to incorporate it, and you really won't even know it's in there. The other one we're going to use is the maca powder, like I mentioned before. And again, with these, a little goes a long way. For one serving, I think maca, you start with like a teaspoon, for example. And bee pollen is something like a teaspoon or tablespoon as well. That's all you need to take. So you don't, even though some of these might be somewhat more expensive, you don't need a lot at a time. So it's going to last you a while. So what we're going to do here is we're going to first kind of make our floury base for the bread. And so in our food processor, we're going to combine some sunflower seeds that have been soaked and dehydrated. Sunflower and other nuts and seeds that have been soaked and germinated are also pretty much superfoods, I would say. When you soak them, you initiate that germination process. You wake up the dormant enzymes in them, and they become a completely much more easy to digest food. And you've got a lot more nutrition available to your body when you're consuming them. The reason that we soak them and then dehydrate them is really just to make them dry and crunchy again. You've already woken up the enzymes. They're much more digestible. Now by removing the water again, we make them more shelf stable. We can keep them in our cupboard. They'll last longer than if they were wet. And we've got a quick, easy snack ready to go, or you can use them in a recipe on a whim without having to plan ahead of time so much. So we're going to add about a cup. We're going to make half of the recipe you have there. Just make one loaf. And I recommend too, if you're trying new recipes and you're not sure if you're going to like them, you never have to make a full recipe. You can always cut it in half to make sure that you like it, and then you don't feel like you wasted your money with the ingredients or something if it turns out being something you don't like. So you can always make a smaller portion to kind of test it out ahead of time before you go ahead and make a full version. Also with raw recipes, it's really easy to double them or triple them. With dehydrated items, I find I don't like to make small batches, because if I'm going to spend the time, it's not really any more time to make a large batch if you're already going through all those steps. Fill your dehydrator, and then you've got a lot that's going to last you for a while. The nice thing about dehydrated food is that you're removing the water. It's going to keep a lot longer than anything that's wet. So you can have a stash of it that's going to last a long time, and you don't have to make it as frequently. So it's really useful to, if you're going to have dehydrated things, set yourself up. And if you have kids, even more important, I think. The next ingredient here I have is almond meal, and all this is what's left when you make an almond or a nut or seed milk. So here, this is just dehydrated from making almond milk. It's also about a cup. I'm going to add that in. We're adding all our dry powdery ingredients right now. We have the chia seed superfood in here as well. If you've ever used flax, or you've heard about flax crackers, flax oil, making flax gel, this is to me like flax on a much greater level. It's a lot more stable than flax. It's really high in protein. It's got the calcium like I mentioned before, and it has that unique mucilaginous property, so you can use it to thicken any kind of liquid, or in this case it's going to help bind our bread and give it kind of a gooey, uniform texture. So this is ground chia. We're going to add that to our food processor. We're going to add another little bit of thickener. This is just to make sure that our bread is nice and gooey and fibrous and it congeals together well. And this is a little bit of psyllium husk powder. And psyllium seed, again, like chia, sucks up the water, so it's a great thickener. A lot of people use it in intestinal cleanses or to keep their colon things moving through and keeping it clean. So that a lot of times will be used as a thickener in raw foods as well. And we're just going to use about a tablespoon or so here. Sometimes people will use psyllium rather than the chia or the flax because it doesn't have the same flavor or sometimes texture that the chia or the flax does. It's a little more neutral. So if you don't want like a flaxy taste in something, a lot of times I've seen people use that instead. So we've got psyllium. We're going to add our maca powder, which I mentioned before, going into the food processor. And I also have another powder here called mesquite powder, and that is, if you don't have some of these things, also if you don't have the superfoods or some of these other things that you might not even have heard of before, you can certainly make this without it. There's a small amount. They do add a little bit of flavor, but if you don't have them or don't want to use them, go right ahead and you can make the bread. The bulkier ingredients are what matters more in this. The mesquite powder adds a nice flavor. It's something that's used in desserts. Sometimes it has a really nice smell. I wish the smell could come through the television because it has such a neat, malty kind of smell to it. I like to use it in some cookies and things like that. Sometimes a shake too. It's good in shakes. We've got our mesquite powder, our bee pollen, and a little bit of spice we're going to add. This is just a pumpkin pie spice blend. I just like the blend because it has a few different things in there, but if you don't have a blend like apple pie or pumpkin pie spice, just use some cinnamon in there. This one has, let's see, cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and clove. Let's shake some of that in. Okay, so we're going to process this so it kind of grinds everything up into a fine flour or powder first. Okay, so now we've got this nice powdery mixture. We're going to put that in a bowl and set it aside. Now we're going to again use our food processor to puree up some of the wet ingredients that we're going to mix together and then make our dough with. So we're going to use some raisins and dates that have been soaked. The soaking is just for softening them, making them break apart and get mixed in more easily. I'm going to pull mine out of the water here. It's a good idea to save the soaking water in case you need any more moisture in your recipe. You've got this kind of sweetened liquid and you're not wasting the water. You can always add that to smoothies or just save it for making desserts whenever you need a liquid. So we've got our dates and raisins that were soaked. We're going to use some bananas. Riper the better. These aren't quite as ripe as I would love them to be, but they'll do the job. And now we're going to use a little vanilla. You can use fresh vanilla bean and scrape out some of the seeds if you want, or you can use, this is an alcohol-free fair trade vanilla. Mixes in nicely into liquids. And it's not nearly as intense as what you may be used to using with the alcohol in it, so usually you might be surprised by a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons. It may seem like a lot, but it's not nearly as intense in flavor as an alcohol-based one, so you don't have to worry about overdoing it. It's not that strong. We're going to puree this now, and then go ahead and mix it in with our powdered items. Okay, so it's okay if there's little bits in there, that's no problem. We've got a nice banana-y liquid there. We're going to add it here. Okay, and now to add a little more texture, we will stir in some raisins, chopped nuts, and some bananas that have been mashed by hand, so it's got a little bit of a chunkiness to it. So I'm just going to put these in a little container and mash them up a bit. I'll get my raisins in there now, and my chopped nuts. And we're going to do a little smushing. Let's see if I don't have a fork right now, but sometimes your hands are the best way to mash things up. Of course, you always want to make sure you wash them before you prepare your food. And it's okay if there's chunks in there. It's all up to how you want your banana bread to come out, but I like having gooey chunks in there. Okay, so I'm going to combine that. Take a moment to rinse my hand off. Okay, so now we've got just about all our ingredients in here. We're going to start mixing it. And as you begin to mix, notice it gets more firm as the psyllium and the chia and even the almond meal start to absorb some of the moisture from the bananas. I'm going to make sure you mix it really well. And it can be beneficial whenever you're using something like chia in a sizable quantity in a recipe to let it sit for a little while to absorb more of the moisture. This is already thick enough to shape, certainly, but if you want it to reach its full potential, then maybe mix it a little bit more. You can let it sit for half an hour or so before you go ahead and shape it. So this doesn't have to be a loaf of bread. You can shape this into cookies if you want to, or something more like a bar, and I can show you how you would do that on your dehydrator tray. Your dehydrator tray, this is from an Excalibur dehydrator. This is their itty bitty one. I like the big ones better, but for demonstration purposes, this is what we have. And this is one of the reusable sheets that they make. They call them Paraflex sheets. And it's great for anything sticky or wet. If you're making crackers, you're going to need something underneath it. Anything, of course, of that texture, pâtés into crackers or burger patties. You're going to find these really handy because you can wipe them gently and just keep reusing them. If you want to make a loaf, you'll see I have a part of a loaf here, fully dehydrated. You would just shape it into that kind of mound. Don't want to make it too tall. Anything that thick does have the potential for spoilage before it might get to the point that you want it to be. So that's why it's kind of a slightly flatter loaf, which I think resembles a quick bread. So you can certainly shape it like that. Again, you're going to use your hands for this part. If you wanted to make cookies, you would just take little dough balls like you would if you were making conventional cookies and just drop rounds, shape them however you wanted to. Done something like this, you can roll it in coconut or sprinkle coconut on. I have chopped nuts to top the loaf if you wanted to put some chopped nuts on top for a little extra crunchy bit on top. That's certainly doable as well. If you want to make an energy bar, it's probably the easiest thing to do. You would maybe not need all of this, but take your batter, cover the entire tray. You don't have to shape them individually, which is why it would be potentially quicker and easier. And when I do this, I generally will do it on a flat surface, so I can go over the edges. What you can do is smooth it out, and I'm going to find the edge with your knife, cut it right at the edge of the Teflex or the Paraflex sheet. And now you can draw lines or whatever shapes you want to do. You can, with kids, get a cookie cutter. You can make circle ones or whatever shape on there, or you can just make a standard bar kind of shape like this. And doing this ahead of time will just allow it to be in that shape when it's dry. Depending on what you're making, crackers or otherwise, sometimes it's hard. You can't cut them in the shape you want after they're fully dry. They'll crumble or break. This one you probably could cut it after because it's still kind of a moist, dense item, but if you want to do it ahead of time, that's going to be helpful as well. So you can do something like that, and then with a thick mixture, it's really easy to just pull it back onto your tray and slide it in, and then you get another sheet, scoop all this back into a pile, and start all over again on another sheet. And with this, it's really great. Once it's dry, it's going to take probably at least a day to get to the point where this one is. We're only dehydrating at about 115, keeping in mind that enzymes will start to deactivate once the food reaches generally around 115 or 118. So we dehydrate at low temperatures to preserve that enzyme life force and still add variety and texture to some of our items. What you can do though, especially with thick items, so it would be really useful with if you're making this bread, for example, is you can put it much higher than that in the beginning for a certain period of time, and that will help warm the food more quickly. The internal temperature of the food never gets that hot. It takes quite a while with all the moisture in there for the food to actually reach that temperature. So what research, they found that putting it up to 145 for up to 3 hours in the beginning helps reduce spoilage and reduce dehydration time, and does not affect the enzyme level of the food, because like I said, the food never actually gets to that temperature. That's just the air temperature in there. 145 for 3 hours, then you would turn it down to, I usually leave my dehydrator at 110 just in case it's not accurate, the thermostat, I mean. And then once you've got this to where you want it, you can certainly make it more dry or less dry depending on how you like it. It's great to just test it along the way, and then you learn kind of what's happening as you go along. You learn what you like, so you know when you want to pull it out. You can easily just slice this up into slices of bread, and I think mentioned in the recipe is something called better butter or something like that. I think it was an olive coconut oil blend I came up with just to be decadent with this banana bread. And it's really, really yummy, and it makes a great snack or energy dense food for children, great for traveling. A lot of the superfoods are really extra important if you're traveling and you're not going to get a lot of vegetables or things that would spoil. Having some of these more nutrient dense foods in small amounts with you when you're traveling can really help carry you through, make sure that you're still getting great nutrition while you're on the road, and they're easier to transport, and especially if you've got some of the dried foods using them. Great for traveling. Our next recipe is going to utilize sprouts, which I mentioned before are one of the most economical ways and easiest ways to add a lot more superfood value to your daily intake. Sprouts can be anything really sprouted, anything that's going to grow a little tail when you soak it and give it a few rinses. Here I've got some French lentils. You can use green lentils, whatever you want. This just happened to be what was available to me. And as soon as they're about a 1/16 of an inch in length, I mean, meaning that little tail that pokes out, that's when they're edible. So you don't have to have them as long as I have them now. Certain ones get more bitter the longer the tail. I know with fenugreek gets a little more bitter, and fenugreek is what I have here. Very aromatic sprout, really nurturing to the body and all the tissues. Has a potent flavor and smell, and often used in curries, which is what we're going to make today with it. So I've got fenugreek and lentils. We're also going to use some turmeric in our dressing and our curry. That's what often gives curry that vibrant yellow color. It's extremely potent as a coloring agent if you want to make a natural dye for any kind of like food coloring. Certainly you can use something like that. Generally, the more vibrant, dark, intense color anything is, the more phytonutrient value it has. And these are the naturally occurring components of food that have really great antioxidant and just any kind of disease-fighting property in a food. So turmeric, it looks kind of like ginger in its whole form. It's like a rhizome. It's got this kind of bumpy, rooty-looking image to it, and it's really, really bright yellow-orange inside when you cut it. So you can certainly use it fresh as well. It might not be as widely available to you fresh, so you can always use the powder. Some people take the powder encapsulated as a supplement because it's that powerful, but you can always use it in your food too. It blends up really well into dressings and sauces. I mean, even if you were making a smoothie of some sort, you know, you might not think this goes with it, but if you put a little in there, you're not even probably going to taste it, but you're still going to boost the superfood value of what you're making. So you can really add it to anything. You can shake it on your salad if you wanted to. You know, it's really easy to just get a little bit in there. We'll use it in our sauce today. So we're going to mix a bunch of different chopped vegetables here in the bowl first, and then we're going to use our blender to make up a sauce. So I've got sprouted lentils. I'm going to do some broccoli and cauliflower florets here. And vegetables in this, you could really make it anything that you wanted to. Here I'm going to chop things nice and small so that they tenderize quickly, or too crunchy for everyone. Some of them are already nice and small. Also going to add some broccoli florets to this mixture. Add some broccoli sprouts if you have broccoli sprouts. And these stems are really useful too. They're really great in your juice. Making juice every day in a green juice. They're also really nice shredded into a slaw and then marinated with other vegetables. All right, we're going to also dice some bell pepper. It's really easy to make beautiful food when you're working with raw foods and all these just different colored vegetables. I often work around the color of things and how it's going to look in the end. So I find that often I have just a variety of something green, something orange, something red, and it's kind of fun to eat that way. There's a whole science behind color medicine and even eating different colors of food, and you can usually tell what their strong points are by their colors as well. Do you want to make sure that you use red, green, or yellow bell peppers? Green is unripe. If you were to leave the green peppers on the plant longer, they would become red, orange, or yellow. So ripeness is always important with our food because that's when it's got the most to offer. It's got the complete mineral profile where our bodies can really use it and understand it. Unripe foods tend to pull more out of our bodies because they're not quite ready yet and they're missing some elements of what they would be like if they were fully ripe. So especially with fruit, it can be hard to find ripe fruit, but something like a pepper or a tomato, ripeness is really important. Another vegetable we're going to add here is some carrot. I'm going to use a convenient little slicer I have to thinly slice some carrot very quickly. So I've got a really nice colorful mix here. I'm going to add some of the fenugreek sprouts as well. I do have some cabbage for this recipe. I'm going to grab that from my refrigerator. Now, this is not Napa cabbage. Napa cabbage kind of looks like this, but it's long and thin. This is Savoy cabbage. This is what I was able to find, so this is what I'm going to use for the recipe this time. I'm going to do, let's see, we'll do some thin slices. We've got a really loaded vegetable salad here, all ready to go. And of course, if you don't want the dressing or don't need the sauce, you can always eat it just as it is here. But we are going to go ahead and make our dressing. And even this dressing has a lot more vegetable matter in it than you might think a dressing would normally have. And that's just to try and get a more complex flavor. Curries generally have a lot of different spices and ingredients contributing to their flavor. So we're using some of these other things like bell pepper for some sweetness. Yellow squash is going to give it a creamier texture. Celery will help enhance the flavor because of the sodium and add a nice kind of crisp celery flavor that celery has. We're going to use a little onion as well as some of the other spices here. Ginger, garlic. So I'm going to start just roughly chopping all these things and then adding them all into the blender. About a half a cup of celery. Roughly a cup of chopped yellow squash. Remember, if you're going to blend it, it doesn't have to be uniform or anything, just smaller so that the blender can really incorporate it all easily. About a half a cup of chopped bell pepper. A little bit more. Now we're going to, add a little bit of onion as well, or scallion, red onion, white onion, whatever you'd like. And some ginger and garlic. Don't worry too much about peeling ginger if it's organic. Sometimes I get a little of the tougher skin off the edge if it's blackish at all or doesn't look that appealing. But when you're using a strong blender like this, chop it all up. Retain all those beneficial properties. Clove garlic. Kind of crushed up there a bit. Now we're going to use a teaspoon of the turmeric, roughly, and some olive oil. Remember that fat helps carry the flavors through the dressing usually. Give it some staying power. We're going to use a little bit of water. And some lime, or if you don't have lime or have a hard time finding riper limes, you can use lemon as well. A little tang. A drop or two of stevia. The reason we use stevia in the dressing is to avoid the bad food combining that would occur if we were to mix fruit in with this, or any other, pretty much any other sweetener, agave, honey. You always want to keep those things just with desserts or other fruits. And also if you're fighting any kind of health challenge, you're not going to want to have sugar in any form. So stevia is the one thing you can use to sweeten that doesn't affect your blood sugar in a negative way at all, and still adds sweetness. It's extremely sweet. It's something like 200 to 300 times the sweetest sugar, so a little goes a long way. If you're using liquid like this, it's going to be a drop or two, and if you were sweetening tea, for example. Powder, it takes a little bit more if you're using powder, but you always just want to put a little in, blend it up or mix it up, and then taste it, because when you overdo it, it's kind of nasty, and often people get turned off by it because they overdo it the first time. So just keep that in mind. It's very sweet. This is a clear liquid. It just mixes in easily without discoloring anything, so it's convenient. Now you want to put any kind of salt, flavor enhancer that you like to use. I'm going to do a squirt of the Bragg's aminos here. You can use the kelp powder again, other sea veggies, the celery salt. We're going to blend it up. Generally speaking, when you're blending, you want to blend for short of time as possible, just because blending does eliminate a lot of the nutrients. So the lesser time you go for, the better, the more you're going to retain. But just want to get the result that you're looking for. So I've got this really nice kind of yellowy orange colored dressing here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give it a taste. Be sure that I like it again, and fix it if I feel like it needs a little modification. I think it's pretty good. The turmeric is not overpowering. It's nice and kind of citrusy, tangy, light, not like a heavy coconut curry. There's a lot of different kinds of curry out there. If you wanted to, you could make it with some coconut water and young coconut meat. And what we're going to do too is also stir in some fresh chopped basil and cilantro. If you're one of those people who really hates cilantro, of course leave it out. Or if you love it, put lots more. Seems to be one of those love-hate foods. There's no in between. So chop that fresh in. Okay, now we just need to give it a mix. And as with any salad like this, the longer it sits in the dressing, the more the flavors are going to mesh together. It's going to soften the vegetables a lot more. You could even put this in your dehydrator for a bit to warm it up and help speed that softening process. You can make more dressing if you want to be really saucier and less veggie. But this, you'll find that after a while, some of the liquid from the vegetables will leach out as well, so it will look a lot saucier than it does at this point. Really colorful, really vibrant, and a lot of superfood value to this lentil curry. And there you have it. A lovely, colorful rainbow salad with lots of superfoods. So we're going to make another recipe now using sprouts, because again, I think they're so economical, so easy to do at home, and so powerful. And I've got a different one this time. This is a sprouted grain called quinoa, which is native to, I think, Peru, and it's the highest protein of all the grains. And it's really, really fun to use. It's got a nice flavor. If you're going to cook any greens at all, you can sprout it first and cook it, and it's going to really increase the nutritional content and the digestibility of it. We're going to use it raw here and make a mock pilaf, so you can see how you could make that component again in a raw form. So I've got, this was really only about a cup of quinoa, and you can see how much it expands and sprouts really quickly. It only requires, I think, a minimum of something like 3 hours soaking time, and then within a day you'll see this sprouting. So it's just kind of a testament, I think, to its vibrancy and its life force. So it sprouts really quickly and easily. This is actually longer than what I have here, what I might normally allow it to get to, but it just happened so fast. I didn't even catch it and put it in the fridge in time. So we've got some nice sprouted quinoa there, and we're just going to do chop the vegetables in a different way, nice fine dice, so that we've got a pretty jeweled pilaf here. And then you can easily eat this along with a salad. You could wrap it up in a green wrap or a nori roll, or use it as part of another main dish you might be making. And dressing is optional if you want to flavor it more. It's really going to suck up the flavor of a dressing nicely. So we'll put a little dressing on it for demonstration. But you can use any dressing you'd like. The only thing I would say not to use is a nut-based dressing, just for food combining purposes. Nuts would be considered a higher protein food in terms of food combining, and a sprouted grain is considered a starchier carbohydrate. So if you learn about food combining at all, you hear that one of the main rules is not to eat starchy carbohydrates and proteins in the same meal. So you can easily do any other vegetable dressing that has like oil and vegetable or oil and flavorings and add it to this salad. So we're going to get chopping here and do some scallions. This salad also would make a good cracker if you blended it up into a batter and dehydrated it. So if you make it, have leftovers, don't feel like you can eat it all, go ahead and blend it up. If it had a dressing on it, particularly an oily dressing, you might want to just rinse it off first to try and get some of that oil off, because oil in the dehydrator is not such a great idea, just because of the oxidation that will occur of the oil as the air is blowing over it. That's one thing that breaks oil down. So you would want to try and rinse off an oily dressing. If you made it plain, then of course you could just blend it up with a little liquid may be required to get it going, but you're just looking for a thick batter in the end. Good time to practice your knife skills. Get more comfortable with your knife. Easy way to do fine dice is to do long, thin strips first, and then hold them all together and go back over them. Really thin cuts. If you're really feeling like you don't want to use your knife but you'd like finely chopped salad like this, you can always pulse veggies in your food processor using the S blade, the standard blade. Roughly chop them, put them in there, and do the pulse, the on-off, and that's gonna actually chop them up. They won't be as square pieces, but you can chop them up really small that way, quickly and easily. The only downside, I guess, to that is then you have to clean your food processor, so the knife's a little easier to clean than that. Some people really don't like using their equipment just because they don't want to clean it afterwards. But that's an option for you. We're going to do some diced red bell pepper as well. Anything finely diced in here, anything colorful, it's going to go really well. I find that quinoa has kind of a corny flavor to it, so it actually goes really well with fresh corn off the cob, or even frozen if you wanted to use that. I have a nice Mexicali quinoa salad in my book, Healthful Cuisine. It's really important to keep in mind with these recipes that we don't confine ourselves to any recipes really, that we feel like that they help give us guidelines, but we also feel like we have the freedom to, hey, I don't have a bell pepper, well maybe I'll just use something else, instead, a radish or whatever you feel like you have. It's important to use up what you have. A lot of people, they're following recipes, feel like suddenly they have a lot of little bits and pieces of leftover things, and they don't know what to do with them. I think it's great if you plan out your week to leave a day to just use things up, or even 2 days, depending on what you're eating. That way you don't feel like you're wasting anything. And if all else fails and you have a dehydrator, you can always dehydrate stuff. Leftover salads, veggie bits that you're not sure what to do, like bell pepper, for example, slice it in rings or strips and dehydrate. It's like candy. It gets really sweet and crunchy. So that's another reason why dehydrator is a really handy tool. That way you definitely end up throwing away less than you might otherwise. I'm also going to do some finely diced zucchini in here. Again, giving yourself a flat edge so it doesn't roll helps. Do some long thin strips first. Do a little carrot. Carrot can be harder to get through, especially if you don't have a nice sharp knife. So sometimes I use one of my slicers to slice it first a bit. Get it into the long flat strips, and then I'll go across and do the thin slices. See what that did was it just allowed me to have these pieces that now I can do the thin. If you're doing a julienne cut, it's really useful as well. Then I can bunch them together and go back over and dice them. And you can stack them up to do the julienne strips as well. Okay. Mix it all together. So we've got this really pretty jeweled pilaf look here. Also gonna put some dulse flakes in there for extra minerals, extra salty flavor. It darkens the look of the salad a tidbit just because it adds this darker color to it, but it's really tasty. Just one form of dulse that mixes in. It's great for sprinkling on top. You can certainly add chopped fresh herbs to this as well. Okay. So that you could certainly eat as it is. Once you start chewing, you're going to release a lot of the flavors of these finely cut vegetables. The quinoa is really tiny, so you do want to make sure you chew it up really well so you get the most out of it as you're eating it. And as I said, you can blend it up for a cracker. I'm going to put a little bit of dressing on it here. I have just some of the infamous Hippocrates house dressing, which the recipe for is in my book, Healthful Cuisine. Just put enough on there to give it a little coat flavor. And we've got a nice light, really energy rich. Sprouted grains are great for energy. They're great for gaining weight if you're trying to gain weight and muscle and you need some denser sources of carbohydrates there. Rinse my hands off. You can also take this salad and serve it in a pepper half if you wanted to, kind of like a pilaf, you know, a stuffing of sorts. Make it look even nicer. Something like that. You could put it in the dehydrator for a little while too if you want the pepper to look baked. But there you have our quinoa pilaf. Our next superfood recipe makes use of the wild and edible greens, and what we're using today is the dandelion green to make what I like to call weed whacker salad. It's funny because a lot of these wild edibles are actually things people consider to be weeds, and they cut them down, and of course you couldn't eat all the dandelion greens in your lawn probably, but just being aware of the power of these things and that they're out there and you can eat them if you want to or needed to it's really important. And I think the most fun and easy way is to learn from an expert. So like I said earlier in the video, taking a class or a wild edible walk can be really fun, and it's also really fun with children because they get really good at identifying plants. I know when my son was like 18 months old, he could go out into our garden and you could say, "Where's the dill?" and he'd go find it. And they're really good at doing this too, so they can help you remember which ones are which. So you can use any wild edible greens that you might have available in this salad. I'm just using dandelion because that's one of the more widely available, recognizable ones for people. They tend to have, dandelion in particular, a more strong bitter taste to them. And a lot of times the things that taste more bitter are the more medicinal things. Medicine is bitter, you know, so that kind of goes right along with the fact that it has a lot of therapeutic properties to it. But other examples of wild edible greens might be things like purslane, sorrel, lamb's quarters, malva, some of these other greens you might not have heard of. But like I said, the best way to learn is to go find out from somebody else who knows. So we're going to make a really simple salad, and the reason that I'm doing this one is because if you do have stronger greens like a dandelion and you're not sure what to do with them, generally something fatty like an avocado will help mellow them out a bit. So we're going to make a real simple salad, chop dandelion greens, kind of mush some avocado and a little tiny bit of lemon, and then some dulse again for some even greater minerals. A lot of the wild edible greens are really a lot more mineral rich than some of our cultivated greens. They have really long root systems that reach deeper into the earth, and so therefore they're getting a lot more out of the soil. So the dulse is just going to boost that mineral content and add the great benefits of sea veggies like pulling out heavy metals and helping detoxify the body. So first we're going to chop our greens a little, and if they're smaller greens, not quite as long as these, you could just put them whole into a bowl. It depends on what you're using. We'll chop them up as small or as large as you'd like. I find even the stems of these are pretty good. I don't mind them in my salad. Another way to use wild edible greens is to add them to your juice. You can always put them in with your green juice in the morning or whatever juice you're making. If you put a lot of dandelion, you definitely will taste the bitterness, but if you don't have a lot or just found a few things outside or had harvested them from somewhere nearby, you can just add like a small handful in your juice and it'll really add a nice flavor and more benefit to the juice. I'm going to just rip this in some pieces. Kitchen shears are really helpful for kind of cutting dulse up into smaller pieces. If it's fresh, it's nice and soft, so it's not hard to pull apart at all. I'll use all of this here. And I'm going to use an avocado. You can scoop out the avocado with a spoon, or a lot of people like to score it first with their knife and then use a spoon. I like to, if I can, just cut it, scoop it out with my thumb like that and kind of dice it. I feel like the dices come out a little nicer that way. Of course, if it's really, really ripe, you're not going to be able to do that. Okay, and a little bit of lemon. Helps tenderize the greens a bit too. And we're going to mix it all up. Sometimes I like to retain that diced avocado, but in this case I kind of want it to smush a little bit and coat the greens a bit. So it won't be too gentle while I'm mixing it together. You can see it really wilts down a lot as you mix it around as well. So here we go. Got a lovely weed whacker salad. People would get a kick out of the name of that too, if you call it that. And you can eat it just as is. Add some more sprouts to it, roll it up in a nori roll or something like that because it's kind of got that wet texture. Lots of different ways to enjoy it. Now we're going to make another recipe that uses the chia seed that I keep mentioning. Chia has that gelling, that unique gelling property like the flaxseed does. So if you ever have made flax crackers before, you can substitute the chia seed for the flax. You could use a combination of both. It works either way. I found that anything that I've been able to, that I would normally have used flax for when I learned about chia seed, I can use that in the same way and just substitute it equal parts for it. So here's a really easy chia seed cracker. You don't even need to blend anything up. In this case, you just need to grind some of the seeds. You can even do it without grinding them. I find that I like that cracker texture better if I do some whole and some ground. You can do a little bit of a thinner cracker that's going to, the batter's just going to hold up a little bit better, and it's not going to become too delicate when it dehydrates if you do grind some of it up. So basically you're going to take half whole, that's whole chia seed there, half ground, mix them in a bowl with some water, and that's the basic gel or batter, and then you can flavor it from there. Got about a cup here. I'm going to add another half a cup, and you'll notice right away that it starts to gelatinize. And the flavor combinations are endless. You can use other seeds in this mixture too if you wanted to have like whole sunflower seeds sprinkled on top, or pumpkin seeds, or blend up some veggies, puree to add flavor and stir that into it. You can stir in any of the spices or the other superfoods that we talked about, like algae flakes or turmeric or the maca powder. It's really easy to flavor in that way. Basic starting point there is you can use a little bit of whatever your salt flavor enhancer is, a tiny bit of lemon juice, and stir some herbs in, and you'll have a really nice cracker. You can see how this batter is really gelatinous already. It helps to let it sit for a little bit longer, really get its full potential going on there in terms of gelatinizing, and the texture is ideal for spreading onto a dehydrator tray and smoothing out nice and thin so you get a cracker. Look at one of my dehydrator trays now. If you want to flavor it, this is the time. Add some lemon, add some Bragg's or Dulse flakes, any of those other things I mentioned. Stir them all in. There's also some other suggested quantities for flavoring if you're not sure what to put in or how much. But once you feel like the batter's ready, you just put some on one of these trays. Again, my favorite tool for spreading crackers is an offset spatula, which a lot of people know is like a pie server, the one that's bent down so you can use your handle to just spread it around. But you can do it with anything. You want to spread it out thin enough where you're not pulling the holes in it, but the thinner you get it, the more delicate, light, and crispy a cracker you will have. And again, I like to do it on a flat surface and then transfer it onto the tray. Otherwise, you just end up getting the edges of the tray all messy, and it's easy if you don't have to wash that part every time. Once it dries on there, it's not easy to get off. You have to soak them for a while. The offset spatula, you've got a nice flat surface, so it's easy to smooth it out evenly. This one works fine for now though. And so I've got it relatively evenly spread out. I'm going to find the edge and trim it. And if you wanted to sprinkle any of those toppings on, like shake dulse flakes or chopped seeds on and make them crunchy, this would be the time to do it. Otherwise, you can go ahead and draw lines, even though it might not seem like they're holding very well after you do it. It will make a difference when it starts to dry. You'll be able to break the cracker apart right at that line. So those are just basic square one. You can slide your tray under, and then you just go ahead and pop that in your dehydrator. Go onto your next tray. And when you're done, mine aren't as perfect shaped as I would like because they got a little banged up in my travels, but you've got this really nice, really crispy cracker. And now that these are totally dry, you can store them in an airtight container at room temperature, and they're going to keep for a long time. The one nice thing about chia is that in comparison with flax, it's a lot more shelf stable. It's not, even though it has the essential fatty acids in that, which go rancid easily in most foods, this one isn't quite as fragile. It can handle more exposure and longer storage temps without breaking down as much as flax does. Flax goes rancid relatively easily, so that's why it's really special. Generally, if you put them in the afternoon, you'd probably be able to flip them sometime in the evening, and they would be dry the next day sometime. So it's a roughly a day process to make a cracker like this. And you'll be able to tell, just taste when you'll know if it's dry and crunchy or if it's still got a little moisture to it. I don't like to give specific dehydration times because there are so many factors that affect how long it takes for something to dry. Things are always affecting that time, so it's best to just check things and you just get used to it. And the nice thing about dehydrating is that you can't burn anything. It's not like an oven, so if you leave it in way too long, it's just going to be dry. It can't go further than that. When it's dry, it's dry. It's just going to be sitting in there exposed to the air after that. So it's not something you have to worry too much about timing-wise, which is nice since we're all so busy. So that's our chia seed cracker. Our final recipe also uses the chia gel or chia seed to make something called chia gel, which is made by combining 1/3 of a cup of chia seed with 2 cups of water, roughly that proportion. You just stir that in, and you can keep it in the refrigerator for at least a week and then use it in shakes or dressings or sauces like we're going to use it in this time. And you get the benefit of that mucilaginous gel kind of coating your digestive tract and helping nourish it along with all the benefits that the chia seed has. So we're going to use that in our sauce, and we're also going to use some bean sprouts in this dish. This is a stir fry, what I call stir fry over rice. This is our raw version of how we would do something like this and make it look similar to what we're used to having. And a lot of people really love the different ethnic cuisines here in America, so we've got a nice mixture. People love curries, they love Chinese food, so this is kind of giving you a sampling of all the different things you can do. So first, normally if you were making this at home, you would want to do the julienne vegetable part of this first, which is the first part of the ingredient list, and chop these veggies and get them in your dehydrator if you have one. And what that's going to do is going to make them look like they were sauteed or stir fried. These were in just for about maybe an hour, I would say. And we'll compare them to what they look like chopped fresh. So it looks very cooked or sauteed without even having done anything close to that to them. So it softens them a little, and it's going to give an interesting texture and concentrate the flavor a little bit. And all I do there is chop those. We're just going to do some julienne vegetables here, which means a long, thin strip. And I've got a variety of things here that I think are fun to have in a stir fry. However, if they're not available to you, it's not the time of year for these things, please substitute. You could put broccoli in there or any other things you might like in your stir fry. I've got some actually sugar snap peas here, and just like to cut them in a few strips. You could just throw whole snow peas in there if you wanted to. But these add a nice little sweet crunch. Making like a sliver kind of cut. If you don't have a dehydrator, you can certainly still make this. Just marinate the veggies, and they're also going to soften, and they're still going to be delicious on top of the mock rice that we're going to do. Julienne, some shiitake mushrooms. Mushrooms are also known to have some medicinal value. I'd say the more wild or exotic they are, probably the more medicinal value they have. Shiitakes are pretty common in supermarkets here, and a little more expensive, but you only need a little bit here. Certainly can omit them if you'd like. And I have some green beans too. I like to sliver these. These are really thin ones, so it's a little trickier to try and have them, for example. That they would tenderize faster if you could have them, or you can always just cut them on a sharp angle like that, get some pieces. But I personally like to try and do my best to sliver them up so they're not tough at all. Mincely. Again, I like to use carrots, so I would take a chunk like I did before. Just get it sliced thin first on this cutter. Makes it easier to do my julienne. Guides really help, especially if you're new to using these. That one actually has a better guide than this. This is the guide for the other one, but important for safety. So again, we've got the long, thin slivers happening here. So you get a good mixture of colorful veggies, whether it's the ones in the recipe or not. You mix and match. And what I did with these was I tossed a little bit of the soy sauce, Bragg's Aminos, on them and put them in the dehydrator for really only an hour. It was at the hotter temperature so that it would work faster, and because I knew they wouldn't get dried that quickly. And what they'll end up looking like is something like this. And then when we're done, if you're going to do that step, when it's done, you would return them to a bowl and add your bean sprouts to that mixture as well. And we'll make a sauce in our rice in a minute and then assemble it all. Bean sprouts, I just don't really like them when they're wilted like the other veggies would be, so that's why I put them in after. If you don't mind them, that way you can certainly mix it all together in the beginning and do the same thing in the dehydrator with those. To make a mock rice, I'm not using any grains. You could do this over a pilaf similar to the quinoa, sprouted quinoa pilaf, if you wanted it to be grain-based or sprouted grain-based. You can sprout rye, kamut, the wheat, spelt, quinoa, and use that, especially the ones like the wheat berries or rye berries or spelt or kamut. They're that long, slender shape, just like a rice granule is. So it looks more like rice, so if you really want it to look dark brown and the same shape as rice, you can sprout a pilaf, sprout a grain that way and use it to make a pilaf, maybe toss it with a few flavorings. If you don't want to use the sprouted grains at all, cauliflower pulsed up makes a rice substitute that a lot of people use in their raw nori rolls. Parsnip does too. Some people use jicama and make a jicama rice. That's a different kind of root-looking vegetable. We're going to do a cauliflower pine nut one. And basically we're just chopping our cauliflower roughly first, adding it to our food processor. Doing it with cauliflower is going to make it look more white, like a white rice. Probably enough. So we're going to add that to the food processor with some soaked pine nuts. Those just help it kind of hold and stick together if you wanted to shape it or scoop it out at all. They add a little bit of a richness to it too. And we will also use a tiny bit after it's mostly pulsed up, of sesame oil and like a lime juice, just to make it kind of taste, have a little bit of an Asian flair to it, kind of taste a little bit like sushi rice, even though we're not using it for sushi. You could always just pulse these two things and leave it as is, season it a little. So here we go, we're gonna do the on-off pulsing motion to chop it finely. What we've got now is this nice kind of fine crumble, and I'm going to add the sesame oil and the lime juice just a bit to add a tiny bit of flavor, and just give it another quick pulse. And of course that's way faster than cooking rice. And you can taste it at this point, make sure it's seasoned the way that you'd like it to be. This makes a great salad otherwise if you stir in any other finely chopped veggies or some peas or some dulse flakes and herbs. It's a really, it's a nice way to eat cauliflower. A lot of people don't like to eat it raw because they think, oh, I have to chew it so much, it's so hard and crunchy, but if you do it this way, it's a whole nother thing. We've got our rice ready. We're going to make our quick sauce for the stir-fried veggies. And this is what, when we're using the chia gel, we're going to use a 1/4 cup of sesame oil, raw sesame oil. Few tablespoons of the chia gel, that's just going to kind of give it a texture of, if you've ever had some of like broccoli with garlic, stir fries and things from Chinese restaurants, or you know anyone who prepares this kind of cuisine, they've got some of these cornstarchy sauces that kind of have like they're clear, but they're also kind of coat the vegetables at the same time. That's kind of what this is aiming to be like. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic. Bit of ginger. Okay, just a tad bit of water. And a little bit of Bragg's aminos for that soy sauce kind of flavor. Now we're ready to blend. Make sure that your chunks of garlic and the chia and everything gets blended up well. And you want to taste it. And I just love that sesame oil. It's so buttery and creamy. It's really nice. This will actually thicken a tiny bit with time as the chia releases even more. So it's not super thick now, but I'll still assemble a plate and show you what it looks like all together. So let me grab a plate. Okay, so we're ready to assemble. We're going to put some rice on the bottom. Now you can either toss a little bit of the sauce with your veggies here or drizzle it. I think I'm going to toss it now. And then you can just pile it up on top of your rice, and you've got a really pretty, fun and different entree that again makes use of some of these superfoods that we're learning more about. That's really going to help boost our everyday intake and strengthen our bodies. So there's our stir fry over rice. Thank you for spending this time with me today and taking the time to learn some more about superfoods and how much they can benefit you and how easy it is to get more into your everyday diet. I hope you've learned a lot from this video. Feel free to contact me. My email address is on this DVD, and I hope that you eat well and be well. Thanks a lot and have a great day.